Well, my name is Peter Alhadeff. I'm professor of music business management here at Berklee College of Music, and I have a background in economics. Decided to become a musician, came to Berklee, and ended up being hired at the start of the music business major. I teach economics, statistics, music in the international marketplace, and before that I used to teach web page design and e-commerce sort of stuff. But now I'm focusing on economics, statistics, anything that has to do with numbers and the quantitative side of the business. I probably take care of. I'm the numbers person at the major. I'm one of the numbers person, I guess, but probably people do come to me when they need some information about some stats. The objectives of the economic course are to prepare students in the world of looking at the music business as if it were from afar, putting it in the context of other trades, and helping them give them perspective about what the value of music means compared to other forms of entertainment. We look at a basic content of an economic course. This has been standardized in the world now for, I would say, since the 1950s or 60s. So we still teach a course that has integrity of content, but it's taught by example, by music business example. For instance, I teach supply and demand of maybe aspects of the recorded music market, like we might look at the market for digital tracks and apply a supply and demand analysis for that, different scenarios, and how they impact the market and the value of tracks. I might talk about, when I get to the discussing the theory of the firm in a standard economic course, I might look at the cost function of a label, of a record label, introduce concepts like marginal cost, opportunity costs. For instance, it's not very well known that a label advance has a cost for the label that is not measured just by the advance that the label gives, but by the interest it loses when it loans money to the artist in the first instance. So I give perspective. I give perspective to the trade by quantifying, for instance, where are the sources of employment, what the value of music, the different activities is. They leave my course understanding how important recorded music is in the revenue stream compared to live music or music products or publishing, and that usually surprises them because the focus tends to be on thinking of me as a songwriter. But when you look at the money flow, recorded music is still very significant. It may become less so in the coming years, but so it's informing essentially what I do. And then the second half of the course, I talk a lot about the world and the economies of the world, like China, India, what's happening to some extent in the music markets there, just by informing about what those national economies are about, and always making the music connection. All our students are music-based only. Berklee doesn't have the separation of a business and a music school. So it's everyone is very interested in music, and I ride the horse of music here to teach economics, and I do the same in stats. Keep the integrity of that course together too, while trying to give music examples, and so that's in a nutshell what I do, John. Well, for one thing, they need to be informed, but more to the point, increasingly, there are markets for students abroad. Students should just not. Well, first of all, the music market is not just local, it's national. So a lot of our students will be looking for jobs nationally, traveling to LA, New York, Nashville. And so an understanding of how the national music market works clearly is important. Regarding the international music market, I find myself being asked by students more and more about where can I find that, is there an internship in Australia I can find, you have that contact in London, can you make it available to me because I'd like to do my internship there. We have the engines of growth in the world economy now are countries like China and India. The music market there is exploding. There's tons of opportunity, and they're bypassing, if you want, they're starting the wrong way around. They're starting with mobile and even less than online services. So there is a lot of growth in new areas of the industry, a lot of investment, a lot of purchasing power, a generation that has skipped what I grew up with, in a sense, and it's very exciting. So we get a lot of students from the rest of the world here. So increasingly the international market is a source, if only for their gigs or for their or for a potential interest for a job down the line, or just for an adventure. And I think we're becoming much more global in every sense. There's no question. I think they should be attuned to their possibilities internationally. I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, you know, obviously you start small and you build big if you're a band. But there's no reason why you might not bypass that process and take advantage of, for instance, the exposure that you can get in England from the press. There's a very active market for music publications in England, and you might conceivably think, well, why don't I start there, get myself some exposure, then return to the United States, play, use that exposure I've had there to build a career. And so we have to think a bit outside the box, and I think a lot of the frictions that were there in foreign markets have to some extent diminished. The European Common Market is now single currency. You can now book gigs online in ways that you couldn't do before. Negotiate with promoters in a currency that now you can predict you will have no exchange risk. There are many things that have improved, not just in communications, but you know, we've had a trend towards regionalization of areas and integration of different regional areas. So also the music market is becoming so fragmented that if you're into dance music, if you're into techno, or if you know, you might explore your music in places where it really is hot. Plus, there's a lot of synthesis of different genres going on. The music market has become far more fragmented since I started teaching in terms of the genres played than it used to be. So you just need to stay informed and take advantage of opportunities. Now you can, as I said, you can book a gig online. It's a company called Sonic based here in Boston, and they enable you to check festivals in the world and go from and book, you know, send your press kit electronically, saving a lot of steps that used to take a lot of time and cost a lot of money just in postings before. And so it's becoming a bit easier to start thinking that way. It will always be critical for a musician to think locally and internally and immediate environment, but you know, I'm seeing more and more an opening of interest in what is outside there. I think it still remains that the national boundary is terribly important, and typically you'll have much more leverage if you've got a national following. But there are examples of you know, depending on the genre, I guess the question is depending. There are genres like world music that artists have made their name outside the United States before they've made with their own music. Take Astor Piazzolla, an Argentine distinguished composer of tangos. You know, he made his reputation outside Argentina well before he made it in Argentina. A lot of world musicians go to Paris to break, you know, to make a mark for themselves. So it could be that in certain genres it's more easy to do it. And it turns out that if you're born in Sweden or in Norway, you're in luck, because you've got an export office, or in Brazil these days, you've got an export office that supports your music, or in France even, where the Ministry of Culture supports music. So those countries if you're an artist in such a country, and that's quite different to the United States, it is conceivable that even if you don't have such a following, you'll be, you know, your export office or Ministry of Culture will be promoting you, and it may be that you might have some success outside your borders. You'll probably have to have some success internally before they take you seriously. But it's happening. It does happen that artists in some genres, I would say. And remember, we're not in the world. The universal genres like rock are diminishing in significance, I think, in the sense of there's many other ways of genres of music out there. So I guess for some genres, who knows? I mean, you go to Japan and they have an interest in the tango, whatever. They're very eclectic in taste. But I don't want to exaggerate and overstate the case. I think those opportunities are there for certain types of music. I think it still remains that you'll probably have to get going locally by and large. There are a number of resources. I think, first of all, I would suggest possibly the best publication. Of course, there's Billboard that has increased its international coverage, but then the best publication that I see on a regular basis on the international music business is like this Music and Copyright. This is a publication by the Informa Group that used to be owned by the Financial Times, and they cover every aspect of music, from country reports to corporate reports internationally to publishing summaries of the publishing world, the live music world. They have excellent reporting. It's a bi-week. It comes out every 2 weeks. It's an expensive publication, strongly suggested. Reading Billboard on a regular basis is excellent. There's an international. Let's see. There's a couple of free subscription services. One is called Royalty Week that takes an international look at royalties and collection societies and the law in Europe, which incidentally seems to be more and more attuned to the changes in the digital economy than we may have here for a variety of reasons. They harmonize policies across the EC, for instance. Royalty Week is a service that you can type royaltyweek.com and just get a free subscription, begin to pick up some information. Digital Music News has another website that I'm sure, John, it also has a bit of an international flavor. But simply tracking the trades, reading The Economist magazine, which probably gives the best coverage of politics, international politics and society and economics, will put in that frame of mind and will open up those doors that you may not otherwise have had access to, and it'll make you think about the possibilities of that there are out there. Obviously, it's not for everyone. There are language barriers and the like, but and there are risks involved too. It may be expensive, but my suggestion is to anyone, whatever your area of interest, to not discard the opportunities available for an American musician abroad too. It's important. I mean, others are coming here. They like what we do, and a foreign record label would be quite interested in London, for instance, to get an American student. Just to pick their brains about how we do things here, and that's what we've seen actually. So I strive for it's a basic statistics course in the sense that it covers topics like descriptive stats, the bell curve. It looks into sampling, hypothesis testing, correlation, and regression. Our students need to know that, and they need to be quantitatively prepared for that. In addition to that, I use SoundScan in the classroom. Berklee has just acquired SoundScan, and so we work the students on projects with SoundScan, and I expose them to the latest reports that I get. Our department gets the latest NARM briefs. You might have seen them, John, or I download reports from the IFPI, the International Organization of Record Companies, or similar, and so I'm always updating them with stuff. One of the positive news of the crisis of the music industry, the drop in sales, if you want, in recorded music sales, that is that there's a lot of information out there coming out freshly. There's much more writing than when I started. I had to fish for information before, but now it's much easier. For instance, the NARM organization is obviously paying big market research companies, the MPD Group, Price Waterhouse, to write reports about the industry, and you see in those reports not stuff just about the music industry, but about games and the market for games and the like. So my interest is always to if in economics they learn the basic tools of supply and demand and markets, when they go to stats, they're looking at data from a more pointed view and in a more critical view. For instance, today in class I showed them the SunScan figures of 2006, the summary figures, and I showed how SunScan was trying to spin the numbers. They talk about a 19.4% growth in sales, and I asked the class, well, how come they're talking about this growth and you're hearing otherwise? And they got into the data and they figured out, it's because they're talking about units sold. They're not talking about dollar value, they're talking about units sold. And could it be that they're counting a song just like they used to count an album, and then the light bulbs go up? Yeah, of course, there's, they're counting a song as it's an album, and so the business is trying to put its best foot forward, and I can show them how this is reflected in a sense in the production of stats and stats. So there's always that aspect of it, But beyond that, it's a typical stats course with they learn a stats program called Data Desk, and they pick up information from the trade along the way. I wish I had more time in that course, I'll say that, because I can barely get them to learn the basics of stats, let alone plug in SoundScan, but we try, and I've found that we just move faster, and you may not get everything, but at least you'll get exposure to methods, and you'll probably, if you continue, you'll take it further. Three things essentially. I think they need good writing skills. That's used across the board. Whatever investment you make in writing is going to be good. I give them essays. I spend a lot of time reading essays. It's a ton of work, but I think for my evaluation of them, I need to see how they write. It's just not good enough that they answer a cookie cutter quiz. So writing is very important. It's going to help you communicate and express yourself with clarity. And the next level of skill up, again, a general point, is quantitative. You need to understand basic consumer math. You need to be able to think on your feet with numbers, hopefully. That hasn't changed, really. There is a component today, in addition to all that, of keeping abreast of current news. Just make sure that you keep in touch with what's going on, and to some extent try to figure out, by becoming informed, where things are going. So I think those three things. A book that I would recommend everyone, from my perspective, to read is, just to give you perhaps the best overall view of the entertainment industry, because music is part of that, is Harold Vogel's Entertainment Industry Economics. It's a classic. It's in its 6th edition. Very, very important. A book that is very useful, frankly, from the point of view of putting in the perspective of how the world is changing these days, is Thomas Friedman's book, The World is Flat. It talks about globalization, and it gives concrete examples, and it's a mind-opener, that book, about how quickly the world is changing, and how other nations are doing things that we used to do, and how we move from countries determining globalization to corporations being the main agent of globalization, to individuals, which of course is empowering for artists. So I think those books have resonated with me, and I would suggest that you've got plenty there. You've got a particular book about the entertainment trade that will give you a lot of information of about the basic economics of the entertainment trade, and a book that will keep you thinking about the future. In addition to that, you need to, of course, stay informed by. There's no secret to doing well. Part of it is staying informed and staying abreast, and keeping yourself engaged around the field that you're interested in working. So, in a sense, it's always been that way, except that now it's easier to take advantage of more opportunities, and there's so much information at your fingertips in a way that there was not before, that it should be more straightforward, but it's overwhelming in many ways. and and the rules haven't changed. As a musician, you have to first know who you are. I think you have to know who you are first and foremost. What are your interests? What are your strengths? What plan do you see for yourself? Make sure that you spend time with yourself before you start thinking about engaging in a plan. If you have a fair idea of that, the rest is just building up and being patient. And whatever your plan is, you'll be able to make a connection. Today, the world is much more transparent in many ways. Just the data available today that wasn't available, the people that you can contact at a minute's notice is just amazing. If you are in a music school, you will have access to connections. Use them. They're hubs, they're connectors that allow you to reach out to the rest of the marketplace and save you time, frankly. It is overwhelming, but at the same time, it's I think there's tremendous opportunity to do things differently and anew, and if you establish that there is a need for something and it can be done your way, to go for it. I think so that when I started, things were much more defined for you, and your aspirations were in a sense limited by by the way things were. So in a way, it is overwhelming, but that's. In a way, it can be overwhelming, but there's also the tremendous opportunity. So in a sense, I think I like this situation more for myself as if I were a young person than the other way around, because it allows you to be more. There's more respect for these days for doing it, if you want, your way and finding your own solution to problems, and maybe that's the way to do it. Especially now that the old ways of doing the business have become harder to justify. It's absolutely important. In my view, it's tremendously important. I mean, it gives you all sorts of leverages and possibilities. For instance, the market in the United States, one of the most developed markets. You have a sense as to how the most sophisticated market in the world, because it's the largest and probably generates the most money, if you want. You'll be able to support any business that is started for the first time abroad. Plus, as I say, the digital market in China, as I said before, or the mobile market. Forget the mobile market. Digital is online plus mobile. The mobile market is growing at such rates right now. You know about contracts, you know about the different rights of music. There may be a role for you in markets that are expanding and coming to terms with those concepts for the first time. I know it sounds crazy, but I think it is true. And so the other thing is that's happening abroad that is not happening here yet is that the business has the potential to grow a lot, because the mobile market is going to take off very, very soon. The biggest rival of iTunes are not other online providers or like Spiral Frog with their new business model based on advertising and downloads. That may be a thing of the past. The big rival for iTunes is going to be a company like Nokia in Finland, with its super phone where you'll be able to download, and its own store. Nokia is going to have its own store in Europe doing what iTunes does. And it's going to sell to other telephone providers too. It's music, so they're going to. A lot of music is going to be bought at the phone. Increasingly now in Europe, you see this more and more. The figures for were weighted towards online sales of music services, the equivalent of iTunes. Now more and more the mobile is picking up. And I'm sure that's going to be the trend very, very soon, because Nokia is about to release a new set of phones that do what the iPhone does, and with its own store and with a more open and less proprietary system than Apple. So that's where a lot of recorded music sales will be generated. The other good news is that, I should say, the live music market is very, very active in Europe and abroad too. So, and that's one of the areas that is growing tremendously. You don't, think about that. That's one of the, in publishing. Those are the areas. Publishing and live music are the two areas that are growing tremendously. Recorded music is slowing. So, publishing, you may need to know about the law a bit if you go abroad, and it may be harder to get into that market. But we'd also be taking cues from what's happening abroad, I think. Increasingly, there's a harmonization of policies. But this may be a bit more distant to the interest of our students. I would just say, fundamentally, keep yourself interested abroad. There's a lot happening abroad. That's what I would tell my students. And it doesn't mean that there's not things happening locally, but just keep your antennas open, because the world is changing very, very fast, much faster than you think. It goes back to your earlier point that our music business students today have to have a wider set of skills than we presumed them to have perhaps in the past. And my answer to that is an emphatic yes. My suggestion is to everyone that is in a music business program, students or even folks that are looking into your website, to stay engaged and pay attention to mining data, figuring out, based on what you know, what a good business plan might be. This is a world where new startups are coming along all the time, and stay informed, possibly more than you ever have. Read the trades, stay abreast of events, because it's very important that it's not going to be neutral to your future. So this outward-looking approach that maybe musicians didn't need in the past, I think is becoming more critical today. And I think the difference between a musician today and what a musician used to be is that a musician today has to be a jack of all trades. He's got to know his business. He's got to be informed about the business he's engaging in. That's critical. He's got to know his music. That's the necessary condition. But he may have to be breaking new ground, negotiating new deals on different terms that have existed before. So it's good to stay informed and have the confidence to change the rules or argue for a change of rules. Come to that. So my sense is, do not underestimate the intelligence of the market out there and the people doing business, and try to do your music, but stay engaged in understanding the business. My problem is that I love music, so when you speak this way to a musician, you're kind of telling him, well, business is very important and more important than your music, and I don't think it is. But increasingly today, people have a wider set of skills that they're using, and so find some time, become involved with the language of I was going to say HTML, JavaScript, all the stuff. Understand the language of websites, because for instance, with the Music Business Journal, it was very good that I knew a bit of that, because when I have to implement a website and make some choices as to how I'm going to manage it and this and that and the other, it's very good that I have some basis with which to deal with people. You have to be technologically savvy, and skills like writing and thinking on your feet are very important. In a sense, I'm making a case for an educated person as a musician. That's what I am. Well, my advice is that if their son or daughter is serious about music, they rest assured that there are good music schools out there that increasingly are preparing them for a complexity of skills. That's what we're doing. We're teaching much more higher level skills, I would say. Certainly more math we're teaching than when I started. We're teaching more computer skills of every type. We have a higher standard of writing than we used to when we started. So increasingly you'll find that in the good business schools you're getting a better preparation to do anything. And the fact that I'm talking about the kid that is going into a music slash business type of environment. If you're just performing your instrument, then I don't know how much the world has changed for you relative to what it was before. And if that is the case, I would suggest that you advise your kid to stay open to, to read about the business in addition to the music. But I would say that there's a lot of learning to go on in the music business. The music business is an example of the information economy. It's one of the first trades that has looked to disseminate information, and a lot of the discussions in the business of music are can be trendsetters. The legislation about digital content online is. So there's a lot of stuff that you can learn. And for instance, if you were to go to a business school or to a law school after that, if that were the plan of your child, rest assured that they would be quite interested in what you have to learn, what you can give to them, because you'll know a trade very well, and you'll be aware of issues, legal issues from the point of view of a trade.
Well, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you so much, John.